Hi there and welcome back to another book review. Today I'm talking about Expiration Dates by Rebecca Serle. If you're thinking about checking out Expiration Dates for yourself, you don't have to worry about spoilers in this video. The first part of my videos are always spoiler free, so you can see if this book is your cup of tea. After a quick summary and a basic review, I'll do a deep dive into what happens in the book and then cover some of my thoughts and opinions. Here are some content warnings for Expiration Dates by Rebecca Serle. In Expiration Dates, our main character Daphne receives notes that tell her how long her relationships will last and who they'll be with. So for example, she might get a note that says, Josh, 6 months, and then go on to date a man named Josh for exactly 6 months. It seems like this system is working out pretty okay for her until she gets a note like one she's never seen before. This new note and the relationship it brings along with it adds a lot of pressure to Daphne's already complicated life. This makes it more difficult for her to navigate her personal feelings and her romantic options. This book is all about what it truly means to make your own decisions and how to know when you've met the one. Before I give you my rating for Expiration Dates, let's do a quick run through of my rating system. 1 star means that I could not finish the book. 2 stars means I struggled to finish, but I did. 3 stars means it was good, I enjoyed it. 4 stars means I really liked it and I would recommend it to a friend. And 5 stars, which is my highest honor, means I would read the book again. I gave Expiration Dates a 4-star rating because I enjoyed it and I would recommend it to a friend, but I probably wouldn't read it again. If you read Expiration Dates and enjoyed it, you may also enjoy One Italian Summer by Rebecca Serle, Funny You Should Ask by Elissa Sussman, and The Soulmate Equation by Christina. We are now entering the spoiler-filled part of this video. If Expiration Date sounds like your cup of tea, now is a great time to pause the video, go read it, and then come back so you can see if you agree with my thoughts and opinions on the book. If you like the sound of this book but you don't want to read it yourself, you don't have to worry because I will give you the full rundown. So Expiration Dates opens up with a note for Daphne. This is the first one she's received that has just the name and not the specified length for the relationship. Throughout her life, she's received these notes and they'll have varying ranges of times from a single night up to several years. This time the note simply reads Jake. So she goes into her date that night with Jake with the knowledge that she might end up being with him forever. The date goes reasonably well and Daphne meets up with her best friend Hugo to discuss the date, Jake, and the note. Hugo is the only person Daphne has ever told about the notes that she receives. Daphne met and dated Hugo several years before. They'd run into each other a couple of times and it was only once Daphne saw a little note under her windshield wiper that she made the decision to date Hugo. And the note that she found read, Hugo, 3 months. Though their relationship ended like 5 years before the story takes place, Daphne and Hugo are still pretty inseparable. They're always hanging out together and are each other's closest confidants. Throughout the book, we watch as Daphne and Jake get closer to one another. We also learn about Daphne's previous relationships and how they always seem to prove the notes right, even when Daphne doesn't want them to be true. For example, even if Daphne decides that she's not going to listen to the note and wants to try and be with that person forever, they'll end up surprising her by breaking up with her right around the time that the note said they would. Jake shares that he lost his first wife to an aggressive disease, and Daphne's not sure how to handle that information. She likes Jake because he's straightforward, honest, and genuine, and their relationship continues to progress until Jake eventually asks Daphne to move in with him. This is right around when we find out that Daphne actually has a pretty severe heart condition. Because of it, she can't exercise and has to closely monitor her salt intake and limit how much alcohol she has. When she tells Jake about this, he's very supportive. Jake asks Daphne to marry him, and Daphne can't help but feel that it wouldn't be fair for him to have to lose another wife. Jake also wants kids, which is something that Daphne's not super comfortable with. As Jake and Daphne get closer, Hugo becomes a bit more distant. This is when we get a little more backstory into Daphne and Hugo's relationship, and we learn that right around the 3-month mark is when Daphne was rushed to the hospital. She hadn't told Hugo about her heart condition, so when he called to see what was wrong, she lied and said it was actually her dad who needed medical help. Though Daphne tries to ignore Hugo and tell him not to come around, he does show up at her parents' house, and when he sees her there and her dad, who is perfectly healthy, the truth comes out. When Hugo finds out about Daphne's condition, Daphne can see a bit of hesitance in him, and she decides right then and there that it's best for them to break things off. Hugo doesn't love this decision, and at this point, Daphne reveals the secret about the notes, telling him that his note said 3 months anyway. As we fast forward back into the present, Jake and Daphne are fully moved in together and planning their wedding. Though Hugo has been kind of absent, he and Daphne end up going for a walk together, and Hugo Hugo asks her if she truly is going to get married. They start to argue and he finally admits that he wants to be with her. This shocks Daphne, but what shocks her even more is when Hugo admits that he is the one who wrote the note that simply said Jake's name and left the duration of their relationship blank. He explains that he had stopped by her house, seen the note, and then replaced it with a blank one to show her that she did have a decision when it came to her relationships. At this point, Daphne is so surprised by everything that she drops her dog's leash and her dog goes running off, and they're both trying to find him together. All in all, it's pretty stressful, and after finding out about how Hugo feels about her, Daphne goes to see her dad, who imparts some wisdom about life and relationships. After this, she talks to Jake and tells him that they can't get married. Jake isn't happy about it and tries to insist that they can get over the things they disagree about, like having kids or him losing another spouse. But Daphne is insistent that it's just not right. At the end of the story, we see Daphne having gotten a promotion at work and walking down the street going to meet a date at a cafe. Her date ends up being Hugo, and when she gets to the door of the cafe, a lady says like, "Oh hey, you dropped this note." And when Daphne turns around and takes the note, she realizes that it's probably has to do with the fact that she's dating Hugo again. However, it slips through her fingers and gets taken away in the wind. Not really caring what the paper says, she turns and goes to see Hugo for their date. Okay, so now that you know what happens in Expiration Dates, let's get into some of my thoughts and opinions on this book. First of all, I think the concept for this book is very interesting and original. The magical realism element through the notes offers a natural sort of structure to this story. First, we see the story opening up with Daphne receiving a note about Jake, and then we see it ending with her getting the final note that she's okay letting go of. The note structure also allows us to easily switch between past and present, looking at her previous relationships and how they ended up following those notes to a T. I think it is a very interesting concept, like I said. I also like how it allows us to see her character develop and how these notes have come to dictate her decision making when it comes to romantic relationships. While I do think that this idea is very interesting, I also think it's worth it to note that you can see what is going to happen from the very beginning of this story. It's obvious that Hugo and Daphne are still in love with each other, and within the first chapter, I think I was pretty much sure that she and Hugo were gonna end up together, and if they didn't, it was gonna be kind of a sad or weird ending for a romance story. But I will say that although the ending of Hugo being the true love interest was pretty obvious, it was also enjoyable getting to that point. There were also a few moments in this book that I thought were pretty refreshing and didn't follow what you expected were going to happen. For example, when Hugo and Daphne are taking their walk, the book mentions that it is super hot outside, and Hugo even pointedly asks Daphne if she's okay. This is after the book has revealed her heart condition to us, so I felt primed for her collapsing or having an episode while they were there. But after Hugo reveals all of his secrets to her, she actually is okay. And I thought that was a very interesting and refreshing thing for this book to do, because the obvious way to move the plot forward feels like to have her heart condition come into play. I thought it was very genuine and allowed her condition to exist without being a plot driving device. And speaking of Daphne's condition, that was another aspect of this book that I really appreciated. I thought that it gave us an interesting perspective into what it would be like to live with something like that and how it might affect your decision making in everything. I also think that it was a very intentional decision to not tell us as readers until the middle of the book, as it somewhat mirrors Daphne's approach to telling anyone in her life about the condition, if she even chooses to tell them at all. The only critique I have for this story is just wanting more of Daphne and Hugo. I feel like the book spends a lot of time focused on Jake, and the reason for that might be because it's a misdirect, or because the whole point is supposed to be that just because somebody feels like they might be right doesn't mean they are. But I really thought the true spark came from Hugo and Daphne, and I just wanted to see more of that. I think the reason that Hugo becomes absent as the story goes on is because it's too painful for him to see Daphne fall in love with someone else. But again, I think that removing him from the story just makes some of the chemistry and interest go away. All in all, I liked Expiration Dates, which is why I gave it a 4-star rating, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a romance book that focuses on how we make decisions in our romantic relationships. As always, you can follow me on Goodreads or Instagram to see more about what I'm reading now and what I plan to read next. If you are interested in any of the books I mentioned in this video, you can find links to them in the description. Thanks for watching.